Today we're interviewing Phil Kean. Phil Kean Design Group is a nationally awarded design and build architecture firm, named Best of Orlando #1 home builder by Orlando Magazine, voted Best Home Builder, Best of Winter Park, 3 years in a row by Winter Park, Florida Chamber of Commerce, Best of House Design Award by House.com, and winning the Platinum and Gold Awards from the National Association of Home Builders, Best in American Living Awards. And today we're going to be discussing with Phil his unique approach to designing waterfront properties with an exclusive behind-the-scenes look into a new St. Petersburg residence. Well, Phil Kean is with us today, and we'll be exploring the fascinating and magnificent world of waterfront residences and looking at the unique design and build process that Phil uses in his signature waterfront residences. So, Phil, welcome. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
This will be a fun conversation. I think as we discuss waterfront design, especially in the Florida area, I think it's really, begs so many questions. There's so many things to consider when designing a waterfront property. The first thing I think that we all think of is the views, but obviously there's so much more to it than the views, which obviously are a tremendous part of this. I know that you're currently working on a project right now in the St. Petersburg area in Florida. Would you be able to dig into that a little bit and share a bit about the property and a bit about the residence itself and a bit about the design?
Yeah, so a client came to us and they had purchased a home on the bay over in St. Petersburg, beachside. And it's one block off of the ocean. So the idea was I went over to look at the house. It was determined that the best use of the property would be to start from scratch based on their desires and wishes. The house itself, since it's at the end and it's a fairly large lot, it's sort of a rounded site. So the house sort of took on that sort of curved shape to take advantage of the views. Part of it was there were views from the roof to the Gulf. So early on in the decision, we decided to do a roof terrace that could take advantage of the sunsets over the Gulf, and that was part of the design criteria. Another thing in the design criteria was that because it was in a flood zone, we had to raise the first floor. I believe it was somewhere around 9 to 10 feet above the ground, the existing elevation. So the house is all raised, and we utilize that space for entertainment and parking and garages and things like that, and storage. So the lower level is, you have to have this breakaway. So there's technical things that the house had to have. That's just part of the technical part. The rest is really all about, how do we take advantage of this amazing view? How do we take advantage of this indoor-outdoor lifestyle? How do we take advantage of the breezes and the sunsets and the sunrises and the boat traffic and all of that stuff? So that was all part of the design. Also, we wanted to make it feel like it was a boat. So when you were inside the house, you had that sort of feeling of being on a yacht. So it's pretty cool.
See, that's really interesting. You're bringing up the flood zone. I think the water elevation is kind of an interesting angle that, wouldn't immediately come to mind, but it is part and parcel of being waterfront. Is that if you are in that zone, it does make sense. So the thing that I'm impressed by as I hear you say that is that you've actually found a way to leverage that and actually turn it into an asset where you've got, storage, you've got garages, really utilizing that space rather than, just, I guess, hey, this is how it's going to be, and maybe having a basement down there, right? So really allowing that to shine and really be a feature.
Absolutely. The downstairs really has access to an elevator, stairs, all that stuff, but you have a limited amount of square footage that can be air conditioned in that space, and it's 300 square feet, which is not a lot, but it's enough to accommodate an elevator and stairs and give it a little sex appeal. And so it's a fun design, really fun.
Can I ask a little bit about the roof terrace? Before we get into that, how many floors is in this home?
The lower level is really sort of the breakaway level. Then there's the main living level on the next floor. So when you come up, you have your great room concept. The clients wanted a workout area. We have a lot of outside space on that level. And we have an office and a guest bedroom on that level. The clients also had some pets, so every level has pet access. And they have a wine collection, so that's on that level. Then on the next level, which would be essentially the second floor of a normal house, there are 3 bedrooms, a loft space that overlooks a 2-story living room, and the master suite or the primary suite, where the bathroom has an outside shower and a terrace, and the bedroom has floor-to-ceiling glass that protrudes out into the water, so it feels like you're on a yacht. Each of the 3 bedrooms on that level also has balconies, and there's also a laundry facility on that level. And then you go up one more level to the roof. So the roof is on the top floor.
So on the roof terrace, is that 100% open, or are there parts of that that are covered by some shelter design around that?
No, there's no shelter up there. It's really a terrace. It's an open terrace. It's really for entertaining and watching sunset. The house itself went through a series of transformations. Originally, we did have some covered areas up there, but there was a height restriction. So we decided to do taller ceilings on the main living and not exceed our maximum height. So that was part of the decision. In the final design, it was really just a beautiful terrace up there and a place for them to enjoy getting a 360 view of the bay and the ocean, or the Gulf. That was pretty cool. And because we kind of maxed out the height, there's nobody that can build anything higher than that. So they'll always have that view protected.
Right. I can visualize that. Yeah, I can see that. I think one of the things that you're very well known for is the indoor-outdoor, flow, and the ability to really fuse the two, right? To have the ability to bring that cohesive feel. Was that a challenge, particularly with this particular home?
That was sort of part of the challenge, because people are used to going out into their yard, or out into a green space directly from their living space. And in this particular case, we used plant material to bring you up to that second level. Right now, there's a plan for a living wall so that the green grows from the first floor up and pulls you up into the second and third floors in the stairwell. And then all of that sort of second level, all those doors open so you can go out onto a terrace that's fairly large. And then there's stairs that take from that terrace back down to a lower level pool. But we have water features on the second level that cascade down to the first level to sort of tie the different layers together. In the front of the house, there's a fountain that is near the front entry, which is on the second level. A series of staircases take you up there, and then it cascades down to the first floor or the ground level. It's just interesting how you can use water or subtle elements and plants to create that sort of indoor-outdoor connection. Even if you can't touch the ground, you have these elements of the ground coming to you. So that was really how we approached that.
I think that's a really interesting point because, that is one of the challenges that you'll see on many homes is that it seems to be a disconnect, right, between the different stories or the different levels, even from indoor-outdoor. And so I think the ability to not only blend indoor-outdoor, but also to use that to also, tie the entire design together. That's a beautiful project to kind of visualize there. In terms of the timeline around that, when do you think we would be able to get some optics on that, to get some eyes on the product?
We are in engineering currently on this project, and we will probably break ground sometime in November. That's our goal currently, to have it started by the end of the year. So there's an existing house on the property that as soon as it goes into permitting, we'll probably do the demo on it. So that's our heads are on it currently.
The first thing that you brought up was the curved shape of the home to really, get the most out of the view and to really maximize that. So when you're designing a home that has that curvature to it, are there a set of obstacles from a design standpoint that you have to overcome? I would assume so. From a layman's perspective, it seems incredibly complex.
We sort of only curved the middle structure of the house, which is where the great room is. So it followed from the ground floor all the way to the roof. But each side of the house is more rectilinear, so it's more traditionally structured. So this sort of mid-piece that curves, that takes on that, if you kind of imagine sort of a cone or something like that, where the widest part of the cone is out to the water, and that's the great room. So when you climb up the stairs or open the door, you sort of get that big grand view. And because it's sort of angled and wedged, it draws you out, and it sort of forces a perspective to make you feel like you're closer to the water than you are. I've used that approach before with doing angled walls, but the curve sort of was a natural for the property. It's kind of reflected the layout of the land, so to speak.
I've got a question around the materials, if I can ask, because I would assume that when you're that close to the ocean, that the materials might need to be different. I don't know. I'm kind of guessing around here because of the fact that maybe there's more humidity, or maybe it's exposed to the elements a bit more than maybe a home that's in the middle of the Arizona desert. Maybe there's a bit more of a difference around that. Is that on track in a way?
Yeah, I mean, if you design a house in the middle of a desert, you're going to have different issues than if you design a house on the coast of Florida. I mean, we have to deal with hurricanes, we have to deal with wind loads, we have to deal with uplift, we have to deal with the corrosiveness of the salt. You know, if you're on the coast, you're going to design different than if you're on a lake. Just different criteria. You know, if you're on the ocean, you may have to deal with turtles nesting, so you have to use a particular type of glass that sort of prevents the turtles from like running towards the light. There's certainly a lot of dune protection that you have to deal with on the ocean. So every sort of waterfront design is a little different based on, one, the location, and two, the client's budget and what they want to accomplish. You know, no two are alike. I mean, other than when I've done a couple of oceanfront townhomes, but they're still different. You know, it's unique to that location.
You know, you touched on wind a bit there as well. When you're thinking about design, how does the wind play into that, or I guess the direction, the strength?
In Florida, you know, depending on the category of hurricane, I mean, you can have some winds that would just rip a building apart. So we tend to use a lot of concrete, you know, both in the structure and even on some roofs, so that it becomes encapsulated with concrete, so it's more durable to strong winds. But we also use hurricane glass for our windows, which can prevent projectiles from going through the glass. They're very durable products out there that are designed for coastal locations and winds, unique, those kind of loads. But hurricanes, you know, all along the coast, some of the states outside of Florida, which has probably the most restrictive hurricane codes in the country, have started to adopt some of these design criteria for their coastal communities as well. So I think that designing in New Jersey has a lot of similarities of designing in Florida these days, whereas 20 plus years ago, that wasn't so. I think Sandy kind of changed that, you know, for the Northeast.
You know, I feel like that's one of the elements that's very underappreciated when we're thinking about, you know, waterfront, especially oceanfront, is you've got so many different variables that need to be brought into the design and the, you know, the entire structure as a whole.
We work really close with engineers to make sure that we design the most solid structures we can to, you know, make these homes survive these storms. And, you know, with climate change and, you know, higher water levels and things like that, we designed a plan for a much more sustainable future of some of these homes. So most of them sit on pilings that can allow the home to stand even though the soils around it may have washed away. You know, some of the homes are sustainable. They have solar on the roofs. And, you know, again, those are all things that people are talking about and what they want. Everybody still wants to be near the ocean and along the gulfs and bays and lakefronts. And just because, you know, the water is rising doesn't mean they're not like leaving. So we have to be smart and take into account those sort of longer term design elements.
Yes. Yes, indeed. While we're on this topic of green design, sustainable design, looping back into the St. Petersburg project that you're working on right now, could you share some of the green, sustainable elements that you brought into this particular design?
Well, probably, obviously on-demand issues. We did not put solar on this, but solar could be added. So we kind of planned for that. We manage our water flow. So we've done all the water-wise products. They're planned for this. In my mind, you have to design a house to withstand and last. And that's a very green thing. So there's very little things that can rot or even rust on these homes. We use materials that are, less corrosive, so they have a longevity. So just thinking about what you put on your finishes becomes a green or greener thought process. I would say, good insulation, good windows, good roofs, good systems. I think we're planning to do mini splits, which are more energy efficient, and you can zone really well in this house. But those are just some of the green features that were planned for this house.
I have to say, every time I talk with you, I'm always, so impressed with the sort of the gambit of options that there are. I mean, even as you're talking about, product corrosiveness, and reducing that and insulation, window, all of these points are really interesting because it really makes you realize that, exactly what you said, that the sustainable green design does have so many different dynamics to it. It's not just maybe a specific energy focus or whatever the case may be, but there's even other elements as well of making sure that the residence actually is very sustainable in terms of its longevity. That things don't need to be replaced all the time.
Yeah, longevity is an important part of building green. The quality of the interior air is important. So all of that stuff becomes a critical design element. And we keep learning more and more and more, and it's really interesting. There's always something new that made it better, that a home built today is better than it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And, and if you're following the best practices, they just keep getting better and better. So today's homes are much greener and much stronger than they were, homes built in the 80s, for sure.
I'm going to ask you this, and this is, I think, a good way to wrap up this conversation is really, I think, around the view. And I think you mentioned, the sunset and the sun orientation, if you will, the boat traffic view, and really being able to maximize that from every position in the home. If you could please indulge us and share, how you approach that type of design to maximize the views.
In the one that we were talking about in St. Petersburg, we designed the house so that every room had a view. So in doing so, you sort of take a house, and in this particular case, we divided it into public spaces and private spaces, street side versus water side versus roof side. And we broke it into different categories so that the center of the house was all the public spaces, and it had the best views. And then one wing was the guest suite, the offices, things like that. And they had a beautiful view of the water, but it wasn't as prime as that center curved room in the core of the house. And then the opposite side, on the main level, we had this amazing view looking out. We devoted it to the terrace spaces, and they have a gym on that level. And then above that, this beautiful view also has the primary suite. So we kind of took the best view and gave it to the most public spaces, the second best view to the primary suite and the gym and the outside terrace on the main living. And then the third best views were all the secondary bedrooms, offices, and things like that. But I have to say they all have fantastic views. And what we did is every room has a corner floor to ceiling glass window that sort of feels like you're out on a boat. So we kind of played up that, floor to glass, corner glass window. So all of them have a phenomenal views, but that was really how we sort of organized the house. So we did a core and then came out from it.
I tell you what, this is very enticing to hear you talk about. I'm visualizing each of these elements that you're saying, and are really, you know how to paint a picture, Phil. This is very, very exciting. I wanted to just ask one last question, which is there anything else that we didn't cover that you would like to cover before we wrap up?
Not really. I mean, really, if somebody has a waterfront, I would say start with the floor plan, start with the views, take advantage of it, play with different ways to approach it. A lot of people think I can only have 1 or 2 rooms that have a view and the rest can't. There's a lot of ways to manipulate a plan where houses can have little corner snippets of views that are all that they need. So maybe it's a little corner window in a shower where you can look out and see this gorgeous view, but it's, maybe only 2 feet wide, but it's sort of cool. Don't limit yourself by the box you put yourself into. It can be pushed and pulled and curved and twisted, and, take advantage of the best views you can.
As always, Phil, this conversation has been eye-opening. I just want to thank you for the time today. And to our listeners, if you found this conversation as engaging and interesting as I have, and you feel the chemistry here, you feel the interest here, and you may have a project around waterfront design that you would like to talk with Phil and his team about, of course, you can navigate to philkeandesigns.com, or you can call 407-599-3922 to speak with the Phil Kean Design Group about your upcoming project. Thank you so much, Phil.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed this interview. To learn more about how you could work with the Phil Kean Design Group, visit philkeandesigns.com. philkeandesigns.com.